Let's make sure we're working. All right, we are live. All right, hello everybody. We are back for another week of Goddess Bible Study. Thank you guys for showing up. We got Joshua in the house and Lisa Adams in the house and Tony G on mute. And there might be some other people showing up. We'll see. But thank you everybody for showing up. As usual, we got this on everdodge.substack.com if you want to read the write-up. But yeah, this week on the Goddess Bible Study, we are into the conquest of Canaan with Joshua, Judges, and the Song of Deborah. So we're just discussing ChatGPT making these fun images. I do just put in the prompts directly, and it's in the more detail you give the prompt, the better the results are. So we are now in the 12th century BCE in the timeline. Egypt fought the Sea Peoples for the second time in 1177 BCE and lost control of its empire in Canaan, setting the stage for the Israelites to enter the Promised Land, which is in the books of Joshua and Judges in the Bible. So the Hittite Empire was to the north, and the Bronze Age collapse caused both Egyptian and Hittite empires to suffer. The Hittites disappeared completely, while Egypt was forced to withdraw to its homeland, leaving Canaan without governance. The Egyptians had ruled Canaan for 300 years as a buffer state, and they had ordered most of the cities to have no walls or fortifications. And so the loss of Egyptian control plunged Canaan into lawlessness and violence, which is pretty much what we see in the Bible story. This anarchic time period is known in the Bible as the conquest of Canaan and the time of the Judges. Kingship would come a century and a half later, and for now, the Israelites are still tribal, pagan, and at least partly matriarchal, as we will see. So in the Judges, it says, in those days, there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. Judges 21-25. So the pagan Israelites worshipped Baal and the Ashtoreths, the common religion of the day. Baal was the king of the gods. Astarte was the queen of heaven. And Ashtoreths means shameful Astarte in plural, telling us that goddess temples and shrines were common across the land. So you see this Ashtoreth with an ETH, and you also see Ashtaroth with an OTH in the Bible, and they're slightly different. ETH means shame, because that ETH suffix is used on some other characters as well to mean that they're shameful. Whereas when it's OTH, it's plural. And so you see this a couple different times, or Ashtoreth in plural. It's because it's the triple goddess. It's multiple goddesses all at once. It's Asherah, Astarte, and Anat all at once, and it's all one big goddess. So you can refer to them in plural, and that's what I'd say they're talking about. So this is a line from Judges here. Then the Israelites did evil in the eyes of Yahweh, and they served the Baals. They forsook Yahweh, the God of their ancestors, who had brought them out of Egypt. They followed and worshipped various gods of the people around them. They aroused Yahweh's anger because they forsook him and served Baal and the Ashtoreths. So just saying what I was saying.
What he's referring to, the Baals there in the plural?
Yep. Well, the same idea. There's Baal of this town and Baal of the next town and Baal of the town on the other way.
Okay,
so yeah. I mean, they're polytheists, so you can have as many reiterations of any given god as you want. So as I've argued previously, I believe that this biblical time period is akin to the Trojan War, and that dramatic historical events were occurring, but there was no literacy. So we don't have them recorded how they happened. Everything was recorded in oral tradition. Dramatic episodes quickly became legends, and then after a while, full-on myths, complete with supernatural elements and esoteric importance. Moses died when the Israelites were on the edge of the Promised Land, and Joshua became the new leader of the Israelites. They fought their neighbors, the Moabites, Edomites, the Philistines, and others, for a homeland of their own. And these were all new kingdoms that emerged after the big fight in 1177. That's why I'm so firm on this date. Kingdom of Moab, the kingdom of Edom, the Philistines, they're all new people groups that all emerge after the Egyptian breakup happens. And we're pretty confident, scholars are pretty confident the Philistines were among the Sea Peoples, and that after this big fight, they simply settled down in the Gaza Strip and stayed there. So the conquest of Canaan, led by Joshua, is one of the more colorful sections of the Bible, filled with genocidal violence and famous stories of entire cities being sacked and destroyed. This has been a ripe area of investigation for archaeologists, leading to many interesting results. So I don't go through all the different stories. There's a whole heap of them. Hazor and Ai, who are both real cities that are meant to have been destroyed, that archaeologists also dug into. It's a big topic. I'm only going to look at a little bit of stuff here. So similar to the Exodus, there's no evidence that the stories of the conquest ever happened exactly as described in the Bible, but there's plenty of evidence that some stuff did happen, and we know for certain that it was an anarchic time period full of violence. So the most famous conquest story by far is the destruction of Jericho by the Israelites in Joshua chapter 6. And this story perfectly exemplifies the debates between the secular scholars and the faithful. So Jericho is a really interesting place. It's a real city. People still live there. And it is the oldest continually inhabited city in the entire world. It's even older than Çatalhöyük in Turkey. Jericho's Neolithic settlements are 10,000 years old, going back to the very dawn of the Neolithic Revolution, like 8,000 BC. Residents of Jericho today describe it as humanity's oldest city. Like you can see signs, like tourist signs saying, we've been here for 10,000 years. So by the time Joshua and the Israelites showed up, Jericho had already been inhabited for 7,000 years, which I just find to be a mind-boggling data point and a mind-boggling sort of thing, just reference point in the whole story is because when I was taught the Old Testament as a kid, it's like from out of time and sort of like time immemorial and impossibly ancient. And the idea that the events that were closer to the events in the Old Testament than those cities themselves, than the origins of those cities themselves. I when I learned this, it just kind of shook me that Jericho was already 7,000 years old before these stories happened. So the precise settlement location did move around a bit over the centuries, but since there's a water source there, people always stayed nearby in that one basic place. So in the Bible story, the Israelites marched around the city for 7 days, carrying the mystical Ark of the Covenant, which brings down the tall, impenetrable walls. The children sing songs about it in Sunday school. I just heard a chirp from something. All right. So this site, since it's a real place, has been heavily analyzed by archaeologists and by apologists as well, Christian apologists. And they did, and what's so interesting about it is they did find thick city walls that had been knocked down in an apparently dramatic fashion, just as they're described in the Bible, but the dating is highly controversial. So it's like the picture that we give in the Bible is exactly what the archaeologists found. And so the faithful take it as a sign of the Bible's inerrancy, but the archaeologists have a very different interpretation. I keep hearing a chirp, like somebody's trying to get my attention. Anyway. So
Ed, are those the megalithic stones that have been dislodged, or which
Bronze Age?
which we
They're
often
not
see
like specifically like mega huge stones, but they're at the Bronze Age city walls for sure.
Well, we know that those foundational layers are often very big, kind of defy our imagination.
Right, they're not megaliths like in Baalbek or something like that.
Okay.
So anyway, this is a very famous piece of archaeology, very famous academically. So Kathleen Kenyon was her name, the archaeologist. She did extensive work in Jericho, and she dated the destruction layer of the walls to 1550 BC. And it attributed them to earthquakes, which they happened. There's other places that were wrecked also in the region at the same time. So they say they know this big earthquake happened, and they say that the Jericho walls fell down at the same time. But that's way too early for the Bible story. So the fundamentalists, they say that it must have happened around 1400 BC, which is what the timeline that they like. But the timeline I'm using that other academics use is that the Israelites are in Canaan after 1200 BC. So the walls were really hundreds of years earlier they were knocked down. So the academics believe that Jericho is basically uninhabited, more or less, and in this Bronze Age collapse moment when the Israelites came into the space. So the question is, when did the walls fall down? Were the Hebrews responsible for bringing the walls down as described in the Bible? Or do they find the walls already broken down and then invent stories and taking credits for the ruin in their midst? And I want to pause there and just talk about this for a second, because this is what I think happened. I think it did happen that way, um, that when the Israelites came into Canaan, they found these ruins there and then wrote elaborate stories about the ruins, taking claim for knocking them down, but they didn't actually knock them down. And so they have this elaborate story about the Ark of the Covenant being circled around it, as a way to illustrate fictionally the power of the Ark, um, but that it didn't really happen. And I think this is really great because this is one of the classic Sunday school stories, that like one of the top 10 Bible stories that you learn as a kid in church. We sang songs about it. I remember as a kid in church, like, I won't sing you the song, but anyway, there's a whole tune that I can still remember about, when the walls came tumbling down, and we would sing it in church. And so the idea that this story was not that it's just complete fiction, which is not hard to believe, but that they wrote the story about these ruins that they found, I find it just to be so terrific. And I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts on that.
Well, you can, I guess, as it's okay to lie as long as you lie in the name of God. Right? I mean,
well, and as long as you also claim victory, if you're the winner, then you get to lie, maybe.
Write whatever stories you want, right?
Uh-huh.
I mean, both these details about Jericho being super old and the detail about the walls already having been ruined. I don't know. When I first learned these bits, when I was researching my book the first time, it really struck with me. It really stuck with me. And I just found it to be really super fascinating about how the Bible was put together and where these stories come from. And just the bigger picture on the timelines of what's happening. I don't know. I'd find these to be really fascinating little details about how the Bible comes together.
So is this what John Cougar Mellencamp was referring to when he said, "And the walls come tumbling down, and the walls"?
Probably. It probably is. He's super Christian, or like he's very Midwest. I don't know if he's super Christian, but he's like a Midwestern guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's from Indiana. Come on now.
So, but yeah, I mean, that's like the wall. I mean, that is an expression that we have. I mean, there'd be other places where that expression would come from, but like, this is a super famous story. It's really one of the most famous stories from the Old Testament. And it
says some people ain't no damn good. You can't trust them. You can't love them. No good deed goes unpunished. I don't mind being their whipping boy. I've had that pleasure for years and years. He might be taking inspiration.
All right. So there's more details from this story. So Rahab the prostitute is a major character in this story. So the story is that the Israelites had set some spies in prior to their attack, and Rahab is this woman who helps them out, and her family owns a tavern, and she provides some assistance to the Israelite spies, and then in return for like betraying her people, basically, her family is spared. And she becomes a very important character in the story because she's a significant figure in the Bible. She demonstrates faith in Yahweh, and so her family is spared destruction. And then ultimately she becomes an ancestor of Jesus Christ. So she's like part of the named genealogy of Jesus. And she is described as a prostitute. So this is the quote here from Joshua 6. "And the city and all that is within shall be devoted to Yahweh for destruction. Only Rahab the prostitute," which is Zonah, "and all who are with her in her house shall live, because she hid the messengers whom we sent." And so Rahab's, as I said, Rahab's family owned a tavern, and she is described as a Zonah, which is the Hebrew word for a conventional prostitute. And she is not a Kadesha, the sacred Hierodule, the priestess. And so it was typical for workers in taverns to supplement their incomes with prostitution, and it was quite normal in ancient times. Other types of workers too, actors and musicians, they would be often supplement their incomes with sex. This kind of stuff was pretty normative. But some scholars have suggested that Rahab was a Kadesha, and there's certainly a connection to the goddess traditions, because the name Rahab is one of the names for the Leviathan, the primordial sea monster, the primordial serpent swimming in the chaotic seas of creation that's closely associated with goddess traditions. Rahab is one of the names for Leviathan. So you've got this element of she is at least being tacitly associated with the goddesses. It's not clearly that she's a Kadesha, but there's a connection there for sure, just in the name alone. Any comment on that before we move on?
No.
All right. So, and then this is the last section we've got is Deborah the prophetess and matriarch. So we discussed the Song of Deborah previously, since it is among the oldest passages in the Bible, dating back to the 12th century BC oral tradition. The song appears to commemorate the anarchy and historical fighting after Egypt left Canaan. Judges chapter 4 tells the full story, while chapter 5 is the original song in the archaic Hebrew. The song mentions Shamgar, son of Anath, and is one of the few mentions of Anat in scripture, demonstrating that the terrifying goddess of destruction was known at the time, even though the biblical writers were afraid to discuss her directly. So this is one we've talked about before. In the days of Shamgar, son of Anath, which is where Anath is named, in the days of Jael, the highways were deserted and the travelers took the byways. Life in the villages ceased. It ended in Israel until I, Deborah, arose, a mother in Israel. When they chose new gods, then war came to their gates. Not a shield or spear was found among 40,000 in Israel. My heart is with the princes of Israel, with the volunteers among the people. Bless Yahweh. So that's the really old section. And we talked about it before because it describes how the highways were deserted and the travelers took the byways. That's like the anarchy and stuff and the lawlessness. So Deborah was an Israelite matriarch and prophetess. She calls the tribes to battle and leads the men. The story reflects the older tribal matriarchal traditions were still going strong when Yahweh first emerged on the scene. So Deborah orders Barak to lead the men into battle, but he says he will only go if she does. Deborah replies that the honor of Yahweh will then belong to a woman. Jael is also a woman who kills the enemy commander Sisera when he is asleep. So victory in this battle belongs to the warrior women. So this is chapter 4 that tells the story in regular language. So now Deborah, a prophet, the wife of Lapidoth, was leading Israel at the time. So the woman was the leader of the community. So it's like a matriarchal thing. She held court under the palm of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim, and the Israelites went up to her to have their disputes decided. She sent for Barak, son of Abinoam, from Kedesh in Naphtali, and said to him, Yahweh, the God of Israel, commands you, go take with you 10,000 men of Naphtali and Zebulun, and lead them up to Mount Tabor. I will lead Sisera, the commander of Jabin's army, with his chariots and his troops to the Kishon River, and give him into your hands. So Deborah is ordering Barak to command a bunch of men and go attack this guy, Sisera. Barak said to her, if you go with me, I will go. But if you don't go with me, I won't go. Certainly I will go with you, said Deborah. But because of the course you are taking, the honor will not be yours. For Yahweh will deliver Sisera into the hands of a woman. So Deborah went with Barak to Kadesh. So this is all about telling us clearly that Deborah is leading the men in the battle. So Barak and Deborah then do defeat Sisera's troops, and the enemy commander flees on foot, only to meet his fate at the hands of Jael, who plunges a tent spike into his skull. So this is a couple verses later, after he's lost the battle. Sisera, meanwhile, fled on foot to the tent of Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite, because there was an alliance between Jabin, king of Hazor, and the family of Heber the Kenite. Jael went out to meet Sisera, and she said to him, "Come, my lord, come right in. Don't be afraid." So he entered her tent, and she covered him with a blanket. "I'm thirsty," he said. "Please give me some water." She opened up a skin of milk and gave him a drink and covered him up. "Stand in the doorway of the tent," he told her. "If someone comes by and asks you, is anyone in there, say no." But Jael, Heber's wife, picked up a tent peg and a hammer and went quietly to him while he lay fast asleep, exhausted. She drove the peg through his temple into the ground, and he died. So there again, the woman is killing the man, killing the commander, and it's the women that win the whole battle. So that's all I've got prepared for tonight. Next episode, we will continue in the time of the judges, take a deeper dive into the goddess worship of the era. We will look at Gideon and the moves he makes against Baal and Asherah, and we will look at some of the archaeological evidence for Israelite worship of Asherah. So open up the discussion now to whatever you guys want to talk about.
Ed, was there a play on words with when they went up to Kadesh? With the Kadesha, is there a play on words there?
Well, Kadesh is a town that they go to a bunch.
Right.
But maybe.
Is this what you're presenting here? Is that pretty much all we hear of Deborah? Does she come up later? Does she have more, are there more details about her?
I didn't quote the whole chapter about her, but no, she doesn't really come back later on. Okay. It's just one section, and then the story goes on.
I personally love that she's clearly in leadership, but that also she's, no problem going into battle and leading, and also delivering, the town, the city. She's like, it's mine. I'm going to be the one to receive it. I'm going to get the glory. I'm going to take the credit, but I'm doing this. I'm taking everybody there. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, I think it's great too. And similar to Miriam, and the why I put them together is that it shows that in the earliest time period, the women still had power, and we just won't see this again later on in the timeline. You just don't see women. There's just no more after these early phases. The women are going to be completely, they don't have these opportunities again to be leading the men. And that's what makes Deborah, she's a favorite of feminists. It's not like I'm the first person to point her out. There's only a handful of women in the Bible that if you're a woman looking for examples of strong women figures in the Bible, there's only a handful of them, and Deborah is one of them. And, but you just don't, one thing I've really tried to do with Goddess Bible Study is put all this stuff in the historical timeline and show the development of the culture over time. And most of the time we're presented with the Bible as this univocal thing, and that it all takes place all at once, and it's out of time. And it's kind of removed from the timeline. I certainly felt that way as a kid in church, that the Old Testament was not part of historical reality. It's this sort of fuzzy, mythological, removed from historical thing, And so my whole exercise ever since I got back into this study is putting it on the timeline and seeing and trying to understand it that way. And I find it to be very insightful, at least for myself, and certainly from this goddess perspective, to see the loss of power for the women and the loss of power for the goddesses as you put it on the timeline. And that this is 1100 BC, right? It's still pretty far back. It's before King David. It's before they take Jerusalem. It's really old,
Well, you quote this verse. If you go up higher, or at the beginning of your presentation there, there's a verse that I think might also speak to this time frame. It says, "Before there were judges," and you always hear it in the pejorative when it's discussed, but where everybody did what was right in their own eyes.
Right.
Where's that verse up there? Yeah, in those days there was no king in Israel. So there was no patriarchal anything going on. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. Does that speak of a time where the goddess was probably more recognized? Was that people had more judgment of their own, rather than being told what to do.
Absolutely. They literally don't have law.
Yeah.
Kings bring law. And this is part of my thesis, is like when we talk about the Greeks, when we get into the Greek parts again, we'll see the Greeks celebrate overthrowing the old tribal systems and replacing them with law, and that the introduction of law is celebrated in Greek mythology, and it replaces the old tribal sort of a, Hatfield and McCoy type tribal retribution that had existed since time immemorial, when people, what's a judge other than just like a tribal elder who's like resolving disputes, like a Native American chief or something, that's kind of how I interpret the judges, that the role that the judges play. They don't have a police or there's no courts, right? There's no legal system. There's no written law. There's no kings to enforce law. That's what kings do. That's all through Mesopotamian history. The kings bring the law. Law follows kingship and patriarchal authority. And so in the eras prior to kingship, you don't have patriarchal authority. You have tribal justice, which may or may not be any more or less fair than, legal systems. We prefer formal legal systems now, but formal legal systems get it wrong a lot of the time too. But yeah, in these days it's totally tribal, tribal.
You could rework that. You could rework that line there to say, like, after those days when there was a king in Israel, everyone did what was right in the king's eyes.
Exactly. That's exactly the point.
Not their own. Like, they lost their sovereignty there, in a sense. That's what it's like I said, it's always been read. Whenever I've heard that verse, I've always heard it in the pejorative, like, oh, it was chaos. Everybody did what was right in their own eyes.
But in a smaller like community or village or tribe, everybody knows everybody else, and it's close knit. And so also people see what other people are up to. And so you kind of aren't just doing what's right in your own eyes. You're probably well within the vision of the people that know you. So people are going to see what's going on. And that's part of how judges are able to make the call, is because people are going to be like, yeah, I know this person. And also other people are going to also be like, yeah, I saw what happened. You know what I mean? Like that's relevant in a smaller, more close-knit sort of situation.
Well, yeah, and that speaks to this book, the book of the Judges. Before there was kings, there was just people who were maybe more talented, maybe more of like a shaman-like situation that was able enough to have enough wisdom to take care of minor disputes within a group.
Right, because if you know that so-and-so is like likely to have slippery fingers, if you will, then there's kind of a history. You know enough about a person to be like, yeah, of course you did that.
Yeah.
There's that part too.
Yeah, I tend to filter a lot of this through like Native Americans, because that's the tribal culture that I'm most familiar with. And I learned a lot from Native Americans in trying to make sense of matriarchal systems and everything. One thing about like a Native American chief is that he's chosen by the women, and then to the form of democracy in a Native American tribe. I mean, not all tribes are the same. There's different cultures, but the ones that in the eastern United States I'm familiar with, the chief would be chosen by the council of like the elder women, and then the overall tribe would have to give their approval of the choice. So it's a form of democracy, but it's not with like politicians and voting and that kind of thing. And then once a chief is chosen, he has no real power. Like, he doesn't have any police force. He doesn't have any like coercive power over anybody. If you don't want to do what the chief wants you to do, you can tell him to piss off and like not do it. All he has is the power of persuasion and the power of, his stature, in the society, but there's no police force. They can't make you do anything. And if you want to leave the tribe, you can leave the tribe. Like, no one's going to force you to stay. But within the tribe, there's a very strong ethics, and a very strong morality, and you don't want to be like on the outs with your tribe, because like then you could get exiled, and then then your life is really pretty. It's like being kicked out of the wolf pack or something. It's like the worst thing ever to be exiled. And so they have very strong ethics within their tribe, and but they do it without police force. It's all like a sort of a soft power, I guess, soft, cooperative, persuasive power, not like coercive handcuffs and jail cells kind of power,
Those tribes were lucky that they didn't have any hippies in there claiming that there was a cancellation culture going on.
But I mean, they tended not to do that. You're right, Tony. They held people to account and held them responsible and loved them, but also held boundaries, and respect and integrity. Like that was the major part of how, say, like a chief or a leader in those communities would assert, I guess, if you will. Maybe that's not even the right term, but because they would hold integrity, and and understood accountability and so on. It doesn't mean they were certainly a perfect person, but that's part of why people gave them respect, because they had good character, and that commanded respect within the group.
Yeah, the honor and integrity is held very, very highly for everybody.
Yeah. Those are the things that I wonder about, Tony. Tony's bringing up like hippies and community. I'm thinking like one of the things I feel like is lacking in so many, not just in communities, but also just kind of as we look out on the current landscape, is there seems to be a lack of integrity and honor and accountability with people.
You don't say, Lisa. You don't say. No honor, integrity, accountability.
I can't not say it as an elder woman. How's that? I can't not say it. But one of the things I think is interesting about this story, though, too, is it seems like the biggest reason that Deborah has been kept in the story, I mean, clearly she has integrity and leadership, and she's able to assert what's, I guess, right for the people, but also because she's linked to Jesus, right, as an ancestor.
Oh, that was Rahab, not Deborah.
Oh, it's Rahab. I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Got it. Well,
Whoa, gotta go to rehab. Whoa.
That would be Rahab, not rehab.
No,
right.
Well, I mean, that's
and she said no. Right. It's a great song. But and I guess that's one of the biggest reasons that Rahab is mentioned, is because not just that she like helped them, but also that she's an ancestor to Yeshua.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's an ancestor of David. I just pulled it up. Rahab, the harlot of Jericho, who helped the Israelite spies, is a significant ancestor of King David, which links her directly into Jesus. She married Solomon, who had a son named Boaz, who married Ruth. We will learn about Ruth. And this line continued through Obed and Jesse to King David, demonstrating God's grace in using unlikely people. Okay.
Unlikely. Yeah. Women are unlikely people.
Right. Yeah. Anytime a woman is featured is because God is so cool. He'd pick a go out of his way to pick a woman every once in a while.
It's so unlikely.
So unlikely.
It really is an amazing thing to see when, what is this that we are observing and talking about here? I mean, this multi-century millennial
like fabrication.
I mean, constant degradation of woman. It's just astounding. I mean, anyway.
It's the fact that it takes place over like thousands of years and it's a fabrication and like all these different people over thousands of years that play a role in continuing the farce.
But also they don't even give any details. They just slander her. It's not like they have a story of her like out there doing anything sexual. They simply
she was a woman, so therefore
they just call her a prostitute and we just like live with it. You know, they just like
she was a woman, so she was a whore.
Must have been a whore. I mean, right here it says the significance of Rahab, grace and redemption. Her inclusion in Jesus' genealogy highlights God's power to redeem and transform anyone, regardless of their past. Like that whore, that filthy whore.
God, it's just like, it's embarrassing in a way that we are, I don't have the right words for this, but that we are not, has progressed enough to be able to see this for what this is. I mean, obviously there's conversations going on right now, but you
mean this self-awareness?
Yeah.
I
mean, this has gone on for a very long time. It's very insidious, and it's like baked into the holy books, and it's really hard to overturn holy books, you know, because they're holy and you can't touch them. So what is it that it's a monolith that, you know, how do you actually address these things and say there's pernicious notions in these texts that are actually hurting women, you know, and keeping us from whatever women can become, because of this prejudice that's built into the very books they call holy. I mean, it's a quagmire of a problem here.
Yeah.
So Rahab goes on. So Rahab is mentioned again, Lisa, because they discuss her in the New Testament multiple times. So the book of James, which is brother of Jesus, right, who took over the leadership of the disciples after Jesus died, and he was supposedly a real person. In James chapter 2, there's the argument of works versus faith. You know, the debate between Paul and James is a debate between salvation by grace or salvation by works. So James champions salvation by works. And he says, you see that a man is justified by works and not by faith alone. In the same way, was not Rahab the harlot also justified by works when she received the messengers and sent them out by another way? So that like she's become
the harlot.
Rahab the harlot, exactly. And that's how, like, that's her, like, her character and her identity is as a harlot first and as like a woman second almost. And then here's another thing. Within the list of faith champions in Hebrews chapter 11, which I have not studied, Rahab is mentioned right after Moses and instead of Joshua. Let that sink in. That's what this article says. Let that sink in. The only other woman mentioned on the list is Sarah, Abraham's wife and mother of Isaac. It is a high honor to be included in this group of believers. All right, so here's the thing for Hebrews. It was by faith that Rahab the prostitute was not destroyed with the people in her city who refused to obey God, for she had given a friendly welcome to the spies. And what more shall I say? I do not have time to tell you about Gideon, Barak, Samson, and Jephthah, about David and Samuel and the prophets.
I mean, what is it just to say about the irony of, okay, Rahab's a harlot. Harlots are very open. Come on in, be welcomed. You know, and yet that's the very thing. That's the thing that makes her despised, because she's so open and willing to bring strangers in, and now like the women that would be more proper, but it's that very attitude that brought the spies in, that ultimately led you. Are you following me here?
Right, because they went in the brothel in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, the spies would not have been able to go into a noble lady's house. So the very thing that makes a woman despised is the very thing that brought salvation to. Yeah, it's just a wild story that doesn't fit later morals, I guess, of the good book.
But a part of what that speaks to about her character is that she was someone of humility and caring, you know, which tends to be the case with people who are, not held so high up in society's, you know, upper echelons, right? Is that the people that have struggled or that are maybe looked down upon are going to have more humility. They are going to be, more generous and more open. They are way more understanding about the plight of other people. So of course they're going to be the ones to help, which I think is part of what Yeshua was trying to convey, right? Throughout everything he practically ever said, that people are freaking not understanding or getting on board with for whatever reasons. You know, I mean, I think that's what it speaks to about her character, though, you know.
Yeah, well, it seems to me that most of Jesus's friends were women, the way I read the New Testament.
Those women helped him a great deal.
We will have plenty to talk about with
priestesses.
When we get
priestesses.
They're not just women are not just witnesses of the resurrection; they're fully responsible for it.
Yeah. Absolutely, they are.
Right. I mean, that's also part of, you know, the goddess and her cycles of life, death, and rebirth. Right. I mean, that's very much a priestess goddess theme is rebirth. So. Makes a lot of sense. The moon, the sun, nature.
Yeah, the entire genre of dying and rising gods mythology are all goddess stories. I mean, this is the argument I'm trying to make to the academics that they don't want to listen to, that all these guys looking at all these stories saying, look, there's a common theme that includes Jesus. And I'm like, yeah, it's goddess. It's the religion of the mother. There is this giant religion of the mother that all the atheist academics just do not want to engage with.
Even just going into a tomb, you know, going into a cave or underground or into that sort of a structure has been, you know, for time immemorial, has been a way of initiation, like kind of forcing a sort of ego death, like a you know, not like a literal death, but an ego death where somebody goes into a space like that and they have to stay there and like freak out and process or whatever, almost maybe like you're tripping, and maybe they were tripping on, you know, plant medicines or something, but so that they could face the ego death and shed what no longer serves in order to, you know, emerge reborn.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, that's going to be one of the best parts of all this when we get to talking about Jesus. Because at this point, I totally look at Jesus through a polytheistic Hindu lens, and through a Shakti lens where the Virgin Mary and the whole resurrection is just part of these Shakti traditions. And that's just how I've come to see Jesus. And like, yeah, I can totally believe in Jesus nowadays because I just don't look at it through the biblical monotheistic lens. I look at it through a polytheistic lens, and then it's actually pretty easy to believe in Jesus. because it's pretty easy to equate Jesus with Krishna, and which they do in India. Like Jesus has been in India for 2,000 years. Like they don't have a problem in India and in among Hindus with incorporating Jesus into their traditions or incorporating the Virgin Mary into their traditions. They've done it seamlessly for 2,000 years already.
Well, I think there's something interesting here too about something that I see with regard to the judges. When I think of the judges or this time period, I almost think of like that shaman, like we were just speaking about, Lisa, going into the underworld, however they did that, whether it's through drumming or some kind of narcotic. In the Old Testament, in this patriarchal system, you see them going up and getting the laws, going up into the mountains. You know, Moses goes up into the mountain, gets the law, the 10 Commandments. When I came across the scholarship of Dr. Peter Kingsley, who talks about, you know, in Greece and in the earlier days of the Greek colonies, that the laws were given by the goddess, and people went into the underworld to get the laws and met with the goddess, and the goddess told how people were supposed to behave up above in where we're at. And basically these shaman-like judges would come up from the underworld and say, hey, the goddess told me this is where the laws come from. I wonder if there's just this constant, in the ancient world, if there's just this constant play between this duality. Oh, no, the laws come from the mountains, more masculine. No, they come from the underworld. You go down, the more feminine. And so it's like this battle of back and forth. No, you have a male god. No, we have a female god. Or, you know, there's just these play, and even the play on words, like good means bad in this culture and bad means good in that culture, like where the Tower of Babel, where everything gets flipped inside out. I wonder if we're watching, if we're seeing something like that with these ancient stories. You have Jesus in the resurrection, the Father and the Son. That is an inverse of Demeter and Persephone going into the underworld, and it's just a reversal. Now, why? You know, they took a cup. The Kikion, they had this experience, and they would go into a death experience and have a resurrection experience. It's an inverse of like the Christian story. Why are these constant, you know, flips and flops of the ancient world? They're playing with something here. From one, maybe it's an extreme. I don't know. Maybe
no,
I'm not
articulating yes, they are. I mean, you can flip the male-female stuff, invert them endlessly.
Mm-hmm.
So what about, here's a thought, the Holy Grail. Do you think there's anything with the Holy Grail and like these mystery potions or of an essence that belongs in the Holy Grail at the heart of the Jesus mystery?
Even if Christianity didn't have a cup that was full of psychedelic potion like maybe Eleusis had, they definitely knew the connection with Eleusis. Eleusis was well known.
Sure.
And we don't, to people in Palestine, all across the Mediterranean. I mean, that was a very ancient rite. Anybody knew that. And I still think like the story of the pigs, where Jesus sent the pigs down the mountain in the Gadarenes, that, I mean, the pigs were sacred to Demeter. I wonder, you know, with the demoniac.
Is that where he sends them over the cliff and the pigs are all killed?
And the pigs rush down into the water and they kill themselves. I mean, there was the washing of the pigs. I wonder if that's not some kind of allusion to Eleusis, because the people would go to prepare for the rites, would bring a pig and baptize themselves with the pig in the ocean before they would celebrate. So I think that there were these things that they're lost on us because we're not familiar with those nuances of culture that they were very much aware of like what people did and how you celebrated an Eleusis. They picked up on that in those early stories, but we've forgotten it. We don't see them in the stories anymore. We're too far away from it.
Yeah, and all those books were burned and all those people were killed and we weren't allowed to learn it. I mean, it's not by accident that we don't know those stories. The stories are kept from us.
Well, I mean, you're familiar with the concept also that the Grail or the cup is also a metaphor for like the divine feminine and for the womb.
Yeah, sure.
You know, and also because it's associated with the element of water, which is also, as we know, like kind of primordial feminine energy. So, and you know, typically so many different gods that are associated with, like, you know, say like Bacchanalia and Bacchus and, you know, drinking and so on, there's always fornication too. There's like, you know, the fertility aspects. So therefore the feminine.
Somewhere along the line, the God became not about life, but a concept, and being told what to do. Like everybody did what was right in their own eyes. It's like this commandment. Like God became some kind of commanding king rather than the life principle that's in all things. And there was a shift from the veneration and worship of life and the profundity of life and the apples and the pears and the giraffes and the insects to like moral codes of right conduct and concepts of justice. Fear,
control, greed. I mean, you know, it's all of those kinds of things.
Centralized authority. It's all about authority. It always comes back to authority, and who gets to be in charge of everybody else, and people competing for their specific authority and not the other guy's authority.
That is a monotheistic. That is just part and parcel with monotheism.
Yeah. You can call it fuckery. It's okay, Joshua. You can call it fuckery.
Well, I mean, it completely dispenses with the other. It doesn't allow you to be patient with it. Everything that travels downstream from that doctrine is, it turns, I think that doctrine, that belief system turns society and all of us, whether it's in a religious community or our society in general, into possibly what we're dealing with now, you know, where there's just a constant, forgive me, to just tell people what to do. This is how you're supposed to live. This is how you're supposed to do this. This is how you're supposed to think. Oh, we don't like how you're talking. We're going to cancel you for saying that. You can only do this. You can only eat that. You can only, it's too much. And I think this is all links itself to monotheism, strangely enough.
Brainwashing, it's indoctrination, it's control. Yeah. It's trying so hard to keep people from thinking on their own so that they are more easily controlled. I mean, and it's like it's the worst one that's been going on for the longest amount of time. You know, it's a ruse. It's a ruse.
And this is why bringing back the mother is so important, because she smashes all that authority without getting rid of God. Because this is the mistake the atheists make. I think is that they see all these problems in monotheism, and their response is, well, there's no God at all. And I think that's just fundamentally the wrong response, because then you just they end up completely incoherent. Their entire metaphysics, their entire worldview is completely incoherent. But if you could address all the same criticisms by putting the mother back in the equation, and then you get a much better answer and a much better result by putting the mother back in the equation, recognizing that we arrived at monotheism by getting rid of the mother in the first place. And I think it's because there's a mistake that she's going to come back.
Because the God has to respect the goddess, and the goddess respects the God. There's a respect for the other. When there's just a monotheistic oneness, who do you have to respect? You don't respect anything. It's myself. It's my individual. It's the ultimate worship of the ego, of the self. And we're not able to see this yet. For maybe hopefully it's breaking through, but it seems so philosophically sound. Like monotheism leads to absolute ego worship.
Narcissism.
A narcissistic God.
I mean, Yahweh sounds narcissistic to me.
Yeah. Oh my God! It sounds like such an abusive husband, right? Like it's such a mirror image of like an abusive father who's abusive to his wife and kids.
No, Lisa, he's love. You just have to believe that.
I never.
No, you're not allowed to talk.
When I hit you,
that God is love. That don't
Yes.
say anything more. You're not allowed to say anything more.
Exactly.
You can't have an opinion. God is love, even though everything contradicts what you're
Bible,
saying.
Bible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I get frustrated. Definitely got a lot of people on social media, of course, in a large group when I made a post and people just, how dare you, and all of this stuff. Because I was like, this is supposed to be for the county, and people are quoting, like posting Bible verses. Like, can we quit with the religion? Why aren't the admins doing something about this? So you can imagine how that went.
Yeah, quoting Bible verses is just, I don't know.
And in this area where I live, I'm in a blue dot in a sea of red. So yeah.
Quote Jeremiah 44. Of course, we're going to keep worshiping the Queen of Heaven.
I mean, so yes, Astarte, Asherah, they are called, the Queen of Heaven.
Queen of Heaven, yeah.
It's so beautiful. Like, and the stars, and who wouldn't want to be part of that? But Astarte wasn't just Queen of Heaven and love. She was also Queen of like war and battles. So that also maybe could be a place where Deborah comes into play too.
Oh yeah,
right?
No, the warrior woman. We didn't even talk about that. Yeah, I mean, the warrior women tradition is totally a part of all the goddess stuff, and Astarte, Ishtar, Inanna. Yeah, the goddess of love and war, and she's portrayed in battle armor with carrying a sword and a bow and arrow and stuff, and she's fearsome in battle. And
well, that's astrological too, because when Venus was rising as a morning star, she was seen as a goddess of war. In the evening, at phase, goddess of love. Yeah.
And Astarte and Asherah, they're both associated with Venus in that way. So absolutely, yeah. I also noticed that she had different animal associations, including doves and lions. And of course, the lion thing would tie into Sekhmet of Egypt, that goddess too, right? So, I mean, as we've established and talked about, that, the goddess, she is all things. She is all the goddesses, and the goddess is one, but she's also all these different iterations and expressions. Right. Yeah.
The lion motif is an interesting one, because you see her in a lot of the iconography early on. The goddess is with those lions. We talked about this in like one of our first episodes. Yeah, I always find these things map so well onto the stars, because you have the constellation of Leo rises right after the moon's constellation of Cancer. So those two are always connected, because you ask yourself, where are these lions? Why do this keep coming up? And I think that that's got to be one explanation for it, because the moon is the rules Cancer, and Cancer is the ancient sign that was rising at the creation of the world. Anyway.
But also the moon represents the mother, and Cancer is the sign of the mother, and water and the seas and everything too. But here's another thing about lions, and we also might have mentioned this earlier on too, but when it comes to lions, it's not the male lion that's like the big brawny hunter. It's the females. The females are the ones that are out hunting. They're the fierce ones. They're the ones taking care of, it's practically matriarchal. It's mostly like the male lions are there just essentially to impregnate and keep the offspring coming. They don't tend to do the hunting. It's the females.
Yeah. No, it's like the females are choosing which male stud that they want to keep around. let the men fight like the males fight amongst themselves for the stud to emerge. And then that's basically his job, is to be like
he's kind of a kept man.
Totally.
I mean, he is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know I saw Tony had to hop off and left a little note with his thanks.
I didn't see the note.
I think I want to end that with just to like finish what I think that this goddess energy is about, or there was a real worship or connection with the moon. And whatever, I feel like we've lost contact with the energies and the experience, the fluctuations that the moon has on us. And I think there was much more of an attention in the ancient peoples that saw the impact of these planets on us than we talk about today. So like when the moon's in Cancer, that is a very there must be something there that, if we're aware of it consciously, that there might be something of a spiritual element there that we might be, that we can tap into if we're aware of it, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And a lot of these things get lost in the stories, but that there is actually real spiritual participation available, not just rational ideas about the goddess, that there is a real tangible experience that's available to all of us if we're able to kind of pierce through some of these symbols and what these stories are really trying to communicate to us, is I guess what I'm trying to get at here.
Mm-hmm. Well, for one thing, artificial light, and also being more inside of like homes and buildings, like that part of living that has shifted over time. And the majority of people have no idea what moon phase we're in at any given time. That's certainly missing. But then there's those of us that do know and can even sort of like somatically, viscerally like sense and feel where the moon is at any given time. And of course, the tying in of the 13 moons in a calendar year with, the menstruation and everything. But they're, to be more animistic and to live in closer communion with and observance of these cycles is what you're speaking to that is missing, right? It's that we forget in many ways that we are just animals too. And that that the natural world, like we're more connected to it than we think of. And because we've been indoctrinated also to think that we have, that sort of power over it, or that dominion over it, that we get to control and manipulate it and so on, and, screw it up in the process. Steal the resources. And then that goes to Ed's thing, like, we got to save the earth and the environment. I mean, that's my thing too, but we do keep returning to that. And I think animism is the thing that everybody's missing out on.
Yeah, I fully agree. Yeah, when God becomes a concept rather than life itself, whether it's life in animals, minerals, all the different things, when it just becomes an idea or conceptual thoughts, boy, we really lose contact with ourselves and our humanity and our world.
We're taught that the material world is fallen and sinful and like bad, and instead of like teaching the material world is like awesome and beautiful and sacred and amazing
and alive.
It's our lived experience.
Yeah.
That often, to have a lived experience of joy, to have a lived experience that is ecstatic, to have a a moment or of something powerful or connection, especially in nature of some way, that the things that inspire awe in us, those are the things that give us that feeling of awe and and the expression of something like really big and sacred and special and important. It's not reading a bunch of stuff from a book. It's rarely prayer, though. I mean, prayer is nice. I pray. And it's hard to get there through meditation too. I mean, goodness knows we all do it, but it can be really tough.
Well, yeah, especially if you're going about meditation in an imbalanced way if you're just doing it with all the masculine energy you can conjure up and you don't even realize there's a whole feminine side of entering into your body rather than trying to escape it. I mean, these systems of monotheistic thought have infiltrated so many layers of our spirituality that I don't even think we're often even aware of that even.
I keep bumping into that, and I appreciate you saying that, because I think a lot of things that you say help to bring me into even deeper understanding and awareness. When we, in all of our conversations, whether they're here on camera or, in our chat or whatever, I think we all get to dig down deep and to affect each other's internal understanding and inquiry. You guys get me thinking, and that's part of what I love about this group, because I'm very stimulated by it, and it's got my awareness percolated, and I don't necessarily want to think too much on it, but I want to feel into it, right? Which is, I think, part of the difference you're talking about with meditation.
Yeah. Well, you think about in meditation or prayer, it's always like being extended outward. You're always forcing it somehow outward. Why is that if the kingdom of God is within? And people play with that, but then it's always predominantly after, say you hear a new teaching or whatever, and people are like, oh yeah, that's right, pray within, kingdom of God is within. It may be, you might stick with it for a day or a week, or it's some kind of new novel thing, new practice you do. But a spirituality that actually incorporates the material experience of being in a body and not wanting to escape it and growing comfortable with it and communing with God in a perfectly happy place, not trying to escape it, is actually a very foreign way to try to commune with God, because we don't have the goddess here anymore. It doesn't occur to us because we need to escape this evil created thing rather than an uncreated material that we've taken on upon ourselves and we've been blessed to experience in this body right now. So,
well, if you're animist or pagan, you're probably plugged in that way. So yeah.
I mean, I totally agree. I totally agree with Josh, and that we're being held back by monotheism, and I've appreciated our conversations too. It's helped bring some clarity to me, but yeah, I think we're fundamentally held back by monotheism. I think that the Marxist atheists are totally doomed, and at some point they're going to realize that when you turn the light of spirituality on to their scientific materialism, what you get is mother. And then you put the mother back in the equation, and this becomes this new vista of where we can harmonize science with spirituality, harmonize quantum mechanics with Newtonian physics by recognizing that there's these two independent things that are interacting with one another. The material and the immaterial, the mind and the matter are both dynamic and both have force of their own and are interacting with one another. And it just opens up this whole new vista intellectually.
Yes.
That I'm convinced is the next phase. But I don't know when that phase is going to come or when the culture is going to be ready for that. Because right now we're still like the atheists are still in charge and they're busy running us over a cliff. And so only after we crash into the bottom of the cliff are people going to be ready for the next thing. And who knows when that's going to be. But I'm firmly convinced that this is the next step and that we are on the vanguard of what's coming next. And even if we're out here in a pretty lonely place all by ourselves, I'm firmly convinced that we're ahead of the pack here. Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you, Ed, being diligent and keeping these things going here. And you don't, as even the scriptures talk about, don't despise the small beginnings, it says. So this is definitely small, but I get a lot of, I'll get a lot of good things from this. And
well, I appreciate you guys. I'm not promoting this at all. I don't even link on Facebook or anything. It's just so it's really, I'm just doing it for you guys and this little crowd that we've got here. Cause I'm a pretty I'm not a public person, and I shy from promoting any shit about me. So, I appreciate that we can have this conversation. You guys are on board and
well, I'm just thrilled to have it. I'm thrilled to have it. So
am I. I feel the same way. I'm going to show up as much as I can to all of them.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much. We are going to be taking off. We can wrap it up now.
That's right.
But I am going to miss a couple of weeks because I'm traveling. So let me see. Yeah, the next. Do I want to do next week?
You'll be gone 2 weeks, was it?
Let's see. The 27th. I mean, I'll still be in town. Tuesday the 3rd, I'm out. And Tuesday the 10th, I'm just getting back. We can do next week. And then I'll take 2 weeks off.
Okay, so the 27th and then back on the 17th of February.
Yeah. We'll do one more week and then I'll take 2 weeks off.
Sounds good. Thanks, Ed. Appreciate that.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Lisa. Talk to you later.
Always good to see you guys. Thank you.
Have a good night.
Bye.
See you, Ed.
See ya.